Thunder Grunt.
Bob.
We're back.
We're back again. Introduce yourselves.
I am Jimmy George. I am a full-time script consultant and a screenwriter.
I am Jamie Nash, screenwriter and writer of the 44 Rules of Amateur Sleuthing, now available on Amazon.
Hell yeah.
And I'm Bob Rose at Thundergrunt Bob on Twitter. And I'm the guy that everyone sends their Bill and Ted news to on Facebook.
That's the truth.
Every time there's new Bill and Ted news, they tag me in it. They send it to me privately. I get bombarded with any new news.
But what's the point of bringing that up? I don't get it.
Well, Jamie, if you didn't know, the movie we're talking about today is Fargo. No, the movie we're talking about today is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which, whew, boy, this is like... You know how we always talk about Back to the Future kind of being the gold standard?
Yeah.
Like one day we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I've held off on that, putting it on the list.
To me, this is like just a few notches under. This is like that high on my totem pole. Yeah. Because my favorite movie of all time is Bogus Journey.
Which I just learned.
I thought you knew that.
No.
Yeah. You're literally in a house right now with 3 framed posters of that movie. That's how much of a fan I am. But we're going to talk about Excellent Adventure, not that.
Which is having its 30th anniversary in a few years.
Yeah, it's my favorite Alex Winter movie.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
Aren't there only like a few?
Yeah, but Bob probably would know.
I mean, Freaked.
Freaked, yeah.
Love Freaked.
I guess Lost Boys kind of counts.
Lost Boys.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, well, I don't know. Lost Boys would be up there, but
he's really a minor character.
Yeah, yeah.
But he commands the screen when he's there.
He's also directed movies too.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
He's a great filmmaker.
That's kind of what I've heard about him.
No, you should see his documentaries.
He's awesome.
But we're not going to talk about
Dark
those.
Web one.
Dark Web, and he did one about Bitcoin and everything. It was great.
Yeah, he's probably got 3 of my top 20 movies, maybe 50 movies.
Really?
Probably 3 of them.
What would they be? The Bill and Ted's?
Bill and Ted's and Lost Boys.
Okay.
We'll count it.
I did not know that. I love Lost Boys.
Yeah, I'm a big Lost Boys.
You didn't know that he was in Lost Boys?
That Jamie was a fan?
Jamie was a fan of Lost Boys.
I'm a huge Lost Boys fan.
Oh my God.
We could do a Lost Boys episode at some point. But today we're not doing that.
No, we're doing Bill and Ted.
We're doing Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
There are 3 posters of Lost Boys in my house. If you can find them.
There might be.
There might.
Jamie.
Yes.
What's the box office on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
1989,
right?
For Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, February 17th, 1989 was the release date. So kind of a dumping ground back then for movies. And still a little bit.
Still.
It's better now. It's more of a year-round schedule, I think, than it used to be. But
man, they showed them.
Yeah.
Right?
$40 million domestically. They don't have foreign.
This is 89 too.
89.
So 40 million. Yeah, it's
40 million.
Good.
That's really good. Yeah.
And I should do what I always do and look up 1989. I'll do that.
Yeah, because Batman's on there. That was the year where I think Harry Met Sally was on that list too. That's why we picked it for this year.
We did. Yeah.
We're going to be doing a lot of
Batman
99. 2009
anniversaries. Anniversaries, right?
So it comes in at number 32 for that year.
Okay.
So just to give you a feel, 32 is right before the Karate Kid Part 3.
Wow, at the same time as that. That's so weird.
That's really weird.
And right after 3 Fugitives, which was the sequel to The Fugitive, where they're
I love 3 Fugitives.
3 Fugitives?
Yeah.
Some other movies.
That's the Nick Nolte movie you're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
So some other movies ahead of it, K-9, Always, Black Rain. Always was a big movie in 89. I remember when I saw it. I'm surprised it was this far back, actually.
The movie Spielberg's known for, I mean.
Yeah.
Right.
Major League, Star Trek 5, Final Frontier, The Abyss at 24.
Wow. It's weird to think of a Cameron movie
I actually
that
can't
low.
believe Bill and Ted was that low. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's surprising me. But there's some big movies in front of it. Like, I mean, The Abyss is 24, and that was like a huge movie.
Yeah, Batman's on
Pet
list.
Cemetery, Sea of Love, a kind of classic.
Yeah.
Harlem Nights, Tango and Cash, Field of Dreams, Uncle Buck, Born on the 4th of July, Turner and Hooch, Christmas Vacation, Steel Magnolias, The Little Mermaid, War of the Roses, When Harry Met Sally, Dead Poets Society, Parenthood, Driving Miss Daisy, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Look Who's Talking, Lethal Weapon 2, Indiana Jones' Last Crusade, and Batman.
This still my beating heart. Oh my God.
What a year.
That is like right prime in my life.
Yeah.
You know, wow.
Yeah. Tune in next week when Jamie reads a list of top 10 television shows from 1976.
Bob, you gotta put We Didn't Start the Fire in the background.
Harry Truman, Batman.
right. Oh my gosh. There's like maybe one movie on there I don't like.
Yeah.
Everything else.
Adore. Really.
And
man.
the movie Bob doesn't like is Back to the Future Part 2.
Yes, I hate it. Honestly, it would probably be Driving Miss Daisy.
I've never seen. That's the one movie on this
won't.
list I've never seen. I've never seen Driving Miss Daisy.
I did.
Homework.
That's not a fan. Who wrote?
Yeah, what's
who
the
wrote
story
it?
behind it? You guys know.
I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
I know. I like Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson. Right?
Yeah, Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson. Ed Solomon is one of these great like Yoda writer guys. He goes to the Austin Film Festival every year. I actually saw him early in my writing journey. He was at the Austin Film Festival and I sat in. He was like the guy. Like he was the coolest because he was doing Men in Black at the time. And as I've said before, if I had one genre I could do, it would kind of be this genre. It'd be the Bill and Ted, the Galaxy Quest, the Men in Black, Ghostbusters. If I could pick, this is where I'd be. I can't pick. They pick for me. So
also, not just doing that, but like he might be my favorite Twitter guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he is so interactive on Twitter with his fans and everything. Follow Ed Solomon on Twitter because he's been releasing Bill and Ted script pages and stuff recently. It's great. Yeah. It's just really great. Yeah.
Excellent.
And where I was with him, so Chris Matheson, we'll go through him first. He's actually the son of Richard Matheson, I Am Legend fame.
Not know that.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's who he is. And in fact, I think
nepotism. No, just kidding.
Bob might know this, but I think Bill and Ted, Richard Matheson even had a hand in Bill and Ted, like in that he said like, you should do that as a sci-fi or something. There was some story I heard.
Spark.
I don't remember.
It was basically like he was pitching it to his dad, and he was like, "Yeah, thinking." And his father kind of. It wasn't so much he came up with the idea as he said, "Yeah, you should do that." You know,
he was the encouragement factor.
I think I heard that in like an Ed Solomon panel once.
I wasn't there.
You weren't there.
I wish I was.
I just knowing the trivia of it all, I thought maybe you might know. But I know more about Ed Solomon than I do Chris Matheson. That's just the reality of it. Chris Matheson doesn't have as many credits outside of this. I think he had a couple things.
He had a couple things.
Goofy movie or something.
Yeah, that I think they both wrote Mom and Dad Save the World.
That's right, Mom and Dad.
Which is a movie I adore. I love that movie.
Which seems like they got they got that gig almost directly off of this.
And that people were kind of hoping for the same type of box office.
Same kind of magic.
Yeah.
So what I know about Ed Solomon, and so for me, I grew up. I saw this when I was a senior in high school, and the things I loved most when I was a senior in high school were movies like this. And this was probably my favorite of that year. Though I did love Batman a lot. I was into Batman.
So like fantastical sci-fi fantasy.
I loved Tim Burton.
Comedy.
Yeah, you know, there were certain things. But the other thing I really loved, and I saw a couple times, was Gary Shandling. Okay, and
dude, I would get a tattoo of Gary Shandling. Yeah. That's how much I love it.
So the Gary Shandling show was huge for me around this time. It was like, you know, the thing I loved. You know, I loved Gary Shandling. I loved the Gary Shandling show.
They were writers.
And Ed Solomon was a writer for the Gary Shandling show. Before that, he got his start in Laverne and Shirley, which is a show I watched every week.
What a career!
Yeah,
I think he lists his best stuff on his Twitter description. Like it says, it's Gary Shandling show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and Men in Black and all that stuff.
So he became great friends with Gary Shandling. He was kind of in like a stand-up comic mix. He was doing a lot of stuff. He started to write jokes for Gary and things like that. And then he got a gig on the Gary Shandling show. And he had a great relationship with him, apparently, for years to come until Gary's death. So somewhere between Laverne and Shirley and this, he kind of had this dark night of the soul where he wasn't sure. Like, I think he stated that Laverne and Shirley was almost too early for him to get a gig like this.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
like he got it like right out of college, and I can't remember if he went to UCLA or I think it was UCLA that he went to. But it could be USC. I'm sorry, UCLA, USC people. But I remember he didn't get into the film school, so he was in the theater department, and he was writing plays and things like that. But Bill and Ted was actually, and this is a part you probably know, him and a bunch of friends, they used to rent out a theater to do improv for each other.
Yeah.
Whoa.
They didn't do it for a crowd.
They
just did
the
it for each
stories on, I think, on the DVDs. The new Blu-ray set you can get from Shout Factory.
Okay.
Yeah, they talk about this a little bit. Yeah.
And that was probably another thing I was really into at the time was improv. So this guy was like my god. When I saw Ed Solomon, I was like, wow, he's everything I wish I could be. I want to be that guy when I grow up. So they did these two characters, Bill and Ted, for this improv that became like a regular thing Chris Matheson and him started to do.
Okay.
If I remember right, there was a third person. It was like Bill and Ted and somebody else.
Yeah, there was something.
The other guy dropped out.
Like, literally, it could have been a three-person. It could have been a trio, but the other guy was like, "Hey." Yeah.
So then at some point
Where's that guy now?
Yeah,
right.
that's a great.
Yeah, at some point during this dark night of the soul after Laverne and Shirley, I think they got together. Chris Matheson and him started to write a script. Came up with the idea, whether or not Richard Matheson said that's a great idea or whatever.
And it's also really funny too if you've ever heard about Gary Shandling, he had the same like Dark Night of the Soul about Sanford and Son because he worked on Sanford and Son.
That's right.
And then he was like, I'm going to become a comedian, and then he did. Yeah. So oddly, his like protege had the exact same type of deal. Yeah. That's really weird.
Could just
really
be the writer's hero's journey.
Right.
Yeah, the writer's
you start at
hero's journey.
sitcoms, then you decide. You make the decision.
So they wrote the script. I can't remember his agenting situation or stuff, but being he was already a Hollywood animal, I think he had an agent. They sold the script, and this is the part I was interested in talking just business wise. When I say they sold the script, because I use this terminology a lot of times what the sale is, they get a certain amount of money, and I can't remember how much they got for an option, and it's usually a very low amount. Nowadays, it might be $5,000 for a WGA option. Maybe it's $7,000, $10,000 might be a high-end option. If you're Stephen King, you might get $100,000. He gets $1 actually. He's a unique character. But they got an option for the script, and what an option is basically somebody giving you money to say, I want the exclusive right to buy this movie for a period of time. So let's say it's 1 year. It's usually a year and a half. A year and a half, I'm going to give you $5,000, and I have the exclusive right to pay you, let's say, $100,000 later on to buy your script. If the time runs out, you get the script back. So they option the script, but, and this is the thing that happens to most of us writers in the WGA world, a lot of times when they option the script, well, you don't get that much money for an option. Like I might get $5,000 for an option. What you do usually get is a rewrite fee. So they usually hire you to rewrite it. Mm-hmm. And the rewrite fee is actually, it could be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, something in there. And that's usually where you make your money. So it's usually like, yeah, the option's nice, but yeah, bring in that rewrite money. The rewrite money is what I want. And it kind of sucks because you got to rewrite and you got to take notes and things like that.
I'd never have guessed this.
But yeah.
Yeah, I've dealt with it, not at the level that
he
money
has,
that
but
he's
I would never have guessed that.
So
Twice.
Whenever I've sold a script, I don't think, maybe one time I outright sold the script. So somebody actually gave me the purchase price. But usually I'm like, yeah, the movie probably will never get made, but give me that rewrite money. So you have to go to work when you sell a script. So it's a weird celebration. It's more like, I got a job. It's not as much like
my movie's
would
getting made.
Would you look at it too, Jamie? This is, I never got to ask you questions like this.
Sure.
Because I've experienced this. I'm not a WGA status writer, so not at the price levels that you have. But knowing what I know now about how the development process works, I see the opportunity for that initial rewrite as kind of a protection of ensuring the material goes in the direction that it needs to go without, because once you let it go, so many other people are going to get their hands on it and do what they do. So does that go into your thoughts of the rewrite, or do you listen to their notes?
No, I listen to their notes,
Yeah.
because here's the other side of that. If you don't, and I've sort of been on this world, if you argue too much and you don't do it, you only get that first rewrite.
Right.
So then they'll go to somebody else on the second rewrite. So you can't really be too protective you have to be a good employee.
Yeah.
But
I didn't mean I'm not that way. I was just kind of asking.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's a good question, but really, you're a contractor, and if you don't put in the toilet in the weird room like the guys say, they'll get another contractor to do it. So
listen to notes.
Listen to notes. You can defend them, but once they decide, this is my advice. This is what I say I always try to do. If I don't like something, I'll push back. If I really don't like something, I'll push back hard. But once it's decided what I'm going to do, I completely forget about my pushback and go all in with whatever awful idea they gave me. I am all in, as if it's mine. And that's how I'd recommend doing notes. If you have to do the bad idea, if you lose the battle, go all in and try to make it the best thing, because that might be the movie that gets made. And maybe you can figure it out. Maybe you can make it work. So anyway, that's my piece of advice.
Dude,
Oh,
that's
thank you.
great. Yeah, thank you.
So anyway, they wrote the script. They optioned it to, I can't remember who it was. It was somebody that went out of business. Was it De Laurentiis or somebody? Or?
It was something like that.
Just because they always go bankrupt.
I saw De Laurentiis on the credits. So
Yeah, it's something like that. There was a bankruptcy thing, and it sat on the shelf.
It sat on the shelf
for a little while. Yeah.
So they wrote it. The first draft.
It was Orion, right?
Yeah, it ended up being Orion.
Yeah, it ended up being Orion.
There was a bidding war after a screening or something, and Orion got it. I don't know how much of a war it was, but the first draft of it, it actually had different characters. I mean, I heard that it had Babe Ruth and Charlemagne, and
also it was about they were using a car.
That's right,
They were
a
using
van.
the van. They were using the van, and this was after Back to the Future, obviously.
I think it was called something like Bill and Ted's Time Van.
Yeah, it was like
It had a
it's a
different title.
very not okay name. Yeah,
yeah, and
wow,
yeah. The one weird thing, I heard it actually, instead of Napoleon, it was actually Hitler at one point, which they changed.
So
there's just some weird stuff like that. But anyway,
which like in 1989 you might have been able to
and
swing. Maybe.
you could see
Mel Brooks
how
made a career of it
because he doesn't have any dialogue. It's all in.
Yeah.
You could see. I can imagine Hitler like at an ice cream place speaking German.
Right.
Yeah. You
and
can see it.
As Bob pointed out, Napoleon really, if you look in the history, wasn't such a nice guy either. You know, and Genghis Khan and all these other.
Genghis Khan and Napoleon are arguably as awful,
right?
Not numbers wise, but as beings in history.
To make light of them is no different.
But
they are not good guys.
This movie has kind of a cartoony sincerity, that,
right?
You know, it mimics like a kids movie almost.
It's like I always look at it kind of like a Magic School Bus type of deal.
Exactly,
it's like that. Like you can go to terrible things, but you can kind of make light of it. We're learning, so it's culture. It's okay.
Saturday morning cartoons.
Right. It's like a Muppets type of feel. You
So
know?
that's essentially its history. The script was apparently a really hot script. It got passed around Hollywood after it was optioned, and people loved it and thought it was the funniest thing ever. And it was a really popular script. It was a big script for them.
That's awesome.
So.
Also, kind of the Californian surfer dude thing was in because
of the peak of that, I think.
Spicoli and everything.
Right.
I think I wasn't in these meetings, but I'm sure at some point they were like, 2 Spicolis go on a time traveling adventure. And that's without drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Point Break is like an extension of like a more sophisticated version of this character.
Right.
Yeah.
Keanu in his early career was pretty much serious Ted after this for a while.
Ted.
So
I almost wonder if he didn't do this movie, if his career trajectory would have been completely different.
Yeah.
There's he's talked about it extensively. Now he's overcome this, but for like 20, 30 years, he always was scared that the typecasting of this movie would follow him to the grave.
I think people thought he was.
Now.
Yeah.
I think people thought this is who he was, 100%.
Yeah, and he's proved himself. How many classic movies is Keanu actually in?
Yeah,
now?
sure.
He's proved himself beyond that. And now I love how about Bill and Ted he is again.
Yeah,
right.
He's totally re-embraced it,
yeah.
and it's just wonderful. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, let's
talk the actual construction of the script. No, but all that stuff is great to talk about.
Yeah, it's all great. And honestly, like I said to you guys before, for me it's hard talking about a movie I consider pretty much kind of perfect.
Yeah.
It always is like weird, but yeah. Let's talk about premise, delivery, and construction.
Yeah, so I think I wanted to bring up premise, delivery, because we haven't talked about it in a while. And I think why this movie lands so well, it's a really simple idea, and they absolutely deliver on the promise of the premise as best as they possibly can. I mean, the second act is all fun and games. I mean, the
literally,
it's one
literally
fun and games.
It almost borders,
next.
I'd say, on sketch.
Yeah.
I think it feels like a series of sketches
that are cohesive somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you could cut 50 trailers for this movie and put different stuff in them, and every one of them would be just as entertaining.
Yeah.
You know, that's how much it delivers on the premise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring up, you know, starting with like a blank whiteboard, how would you construct this movie based on its premise and show how they did that, you know, the same way that we've done before.
Really quick, what would you say the log line is? I mean, just...
when two flunking slacker wannabes rock stars have to pass their history exam using a time machine in order to bring peace and harmony to the universe.
Right.
That's
right.
Good. Is that good?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Because there is no villain, so there's no antagonist
it's,
to throw in there.
You did a good job. It's always hard to do. I have a hard time doing log lines off the top of my head, but heroes, the two guys, goal to do a history report.
Yeah.
Stakes, if they don't do the history report, they will be broken up. He'll go to military school, and the world will end. Or whatever.
Well, the future dies.
The future dies.
The good future that they were told exists.
Stakes,
It has a perfect logline construction, and then you just have to put marketing words around that circle of things.
Yeah. So when you're doing premise delivery, and I wanted to start before we go into the good way to do it. I had a client who gave me permission to talk about his script. Cool. So
really, okay.
Yeah, and I asked that he's a listener, and thank you for allowing.
Seriously, thank you for listening, sir.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Or lady, I don't know.
No, it's a sir.
Okay.
And I just did notes for this.
It's Lawrence Kasdan.
Yeah, I wish, dude. He would butcher my script.
He'd like our solo episode. He would like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Jake, or John. Yeah. So I just did notes on this script a few days ago, and it has an incredible premise. And then the reason that it's not a good script is it abandons that premise after the first act setup.
I see that a lot.
So, and this, like Jamie said, you with your students, you see that a lot. Yeah. So
it's almost like sometimes with my students, it almost feels like they don't trust in it enough.
And that's exactly what he said to me when I gave him the notes.
Yeah,
he said, I didn't
start
trust
getting
in the premise.
It's almost like they get
that you would start writing something and not trust the premise.
Happens all the time.
It's so common.
Yeah.
So what
I would even say I did it early in my career.
Me too.
Like I get to page 50
you have to
and start
learn
being
how
like,
to do this process.
And you
you have to go all
turn.
in on your idea.
So and it's all about taking the time to say, okay, what is my premise? And so, for instance, for this script, I'm not going to say the exact premise, but it was a story that was perfectly designed to take place on a college campus. It was about purity and losing your innocence, this story. Mm-hmm. And it was a genre, it was a horror. And it just was
not comedy. It was just horror.
It was a high concept horror with a great title that was perfectly designed for a college campus and a group of college characters who are dealing with situations that they will be losing their innocence about. Okay. Mm-hmm. The script opens on a college campus. Okay. Perfect, right? At a frat party. Mm-hmm. The beginning of the movie is all at the college. You meet these college characters who have these college problems, and you see that some of these characters are going to be dealing with losing innocence. Right. All the setup involves that. And then for the next 75% of the movie, he took the story out of the college campus to an abandoned asylum and never explored any of the loss of purity that he promised in this premise, and never went back to the Greek setting that was perfect for his idea.
So it just became like a character horror.
It just became a bland horror movie that had nothing to do with his premise.
Yeah, right.
Right? He promised all this cool stuff and then abandoned it because he, like you said, and he told me himself, he didn't trust in his idea. And so I see this so often.
It's one of the most common things. Yeah.
Where somebody comes to me and they have this idea that is so good. You're like, this is a movie. And then you read the script and there's nothing there that explores that great idea or does anything with it.
Right.
And so with this movie, it's all about answering the what if question. So you say, what if two slackers who are wannabe rock stars are entrust their future will bring peace and harmony to the universe, but in order for peace and harmony to the universe to happen, they have to pass their history exam. What is that movie?
Right.
You know, and then so you start with, okay, well, what are the characters that you would have in that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're gonna teach them history through time travel, we could meet Napoleon, right? We could meet Genghis Khan. We could meet Joan of Arc. We could meet who did I
Socrates.
miss? Socrates. We could meet Billy the Kid.
Right.
So like they took the time to build this list of all the possible characters that they could interact with based on that specific premise.
Right.
And then what does that create? Okay, well, where is it going to take them? Right? The set pieces. It's going to take them to France during the war. It's going to take them to the Old West.
Yeah.
It's going to take them. And all of these settings were built based on how do we best answer the what if question in like an entertaining manner.
The failure of that is almost the version where they get Billy the Kid and he comes back here and then we skip the time travel for the rest of it for a little while.
And I've read scripts like that. It's like let's just abandon it. Let's just hang out with Billy the Kid. Right?
We did our time travel thing for 10 minutes. People got it and we're done. We're done time travel.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know.
And the time travel, what we're saying is the time travel is the fun and games too in this movie. Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and it doesn't abandon that
all
ever.
Of it.
Yeah, really.
But so they said, okay, how can we take these two slackers and put them into situations throughout history and make it fun and interesting based on the question of this the premise of this movie? And you can see the list building, and I'm sure, just like we've talked about in the past, some of that stuff they threw up on that board of ideas got put into the second movie because they didn't get a chance to do it in the first movie. Right. And that's what usually happens with these great movies that end up having sequels, like Raiders of the Lost Ark. A lot of the stuff that's in Temple of Doom was premise delivery stuff that they didn't get to put in.
Look Who's Talking 2 was like that.
I'm sure. I bet you.
You know, you say that, but yeah, I'm gonna say.
I bet it was. But you know, and that you can ask yourself, okay, what are some of the lines that would show up in the trailer? You know, you got some great ones where he says, "Strange things are afoot at the Circle K, man. You killed Ted, you medieval dickweed."
Right,
you know, these are the things that only would. Lines of dialogue like this would only happen in your specific premise. You know, you gotta mine it and like you've said this before. You suck the creative juice. You just
it's the orange. You keep squeezing it,
right? And like we talk about the Blake Snyder, the fun and games. I mean, this entire Act 2 is fun and games. And I've read scripts, and I know Jamie has read scripts where the entire Act 2 of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure would be a one-page montage.
Because they want to get that over with.
Right, just get it over with. And it's like, no, that's the point of the movie.
Yeah, and that's really what they come to writers for.
Well, I think Jamie said it. I forget which. It was not that long ago in an episode, but you said fun and games is kind of the reason movies exist.
Yeah, like, it is. It's why we go.
It's why we go, like, to cheeseburger movies, to genre
bringing
movies.
back that cheeseburger.
Bringing back the cheeseburger from last episode.
You're like, I want
fun and games is the reason we go to the movies for genre.
I know, like William Martell's book, Secrets of Action Screenwriting, and I'm a big fan of William Martell, great guy. But he writes these, like, they're called blue books, but he also, you can get them on Kindle.
99 cents a piece.
That's my plug for Bill.
Thank you. Yeah.
His
Bill's great.
Secrets of Action Screenwriting was his first, and I think it's always the one I say. I think it was the one he was meant to write.
It's the only one I haven't read.
Really? Really, it's great.
And don't worry, I haven't read it.
Now that I think about this, but he basically says, he used to do, and I used to do this too, so when I read it, I was like, this makes total sense. But he just would start out his script, like maybe come up with the idea, and the first thing he'd do is just start writing a list of gags.
Yep.
You know, I mean, what are all the action sequences that happen in a movie about a suicidal cop, like Lethal Weapon? Yep. And they'd start writing, well, he could handcuff a guy on a ledge, and we could, you know, and he'd just start writing all the possible ones.
So for this, it's like if I had Spicoli going through history, let me just write down a list.
Exactly.
Well, here's the list.
What does that look like?
Yeah, here's the list, and you would write down this movie.
And
right, yeah.
And I actually think the way to do it is do quantity, not quality. I think he might have in his book. I apologize because I haven't read it in a while, but I think he just tried to fill a page of paper.
Yeah.
He just filled a page of paper. And I used to do the same thing. Like I used to give myself a crazy number. I think the key is don't give yourself 5. Give yourself 100.
Yep.
Because if you do 100, it'll let your mind, your critic, kind of stop, because you'll just start writing stupid stuff.
Yep.
And the stupid stuff might be the best stuff you can write.
It's also probably the most unique stuff.
It probably is.
It probably is. Yeah.
And then I think what I've learned is you have to fold it back on itself. So we probably would come up with all the ideas. Bill and Ted in these fun locations, like what would they do in the Old West? What would we do in medieval times? But then you got it. This is the folding part. This is where the next level comes in. You have to say, okay, well, wait, but now I have historical figures in modern times.
Yeah.
So that's the next level of it.
I think I wrote in there.
That's perfectly put. Folding on.
One of the great things about this movie specifically is it's fish out of water. And then reversed. Yeah, it's like fish out of water, then fish out of water. Yeah, like,
exactly.
Which a lot of movies don't have a chance to do ever.
No, it's so pure and easy. And
right.
Yeah, so you just got to keep flip-flopping those things back and forth, and you got to get every squeeze of juice at that premise.
Right.
So you don't leave anything on the table. You don't want anybody to say, you know what joke you should have done? Because you want to cover every single one with your premise. You just want to eat them up.
And that's
I'm sure that Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson got like, you should have put this historical figure in your movie. But you know what I mean?
And they're probably like, well, we thought about
that, yeah. But I'm saying for years they probably got, you should have done Pol Pot. Oh, no.
A great exercise. This is, and I know he'll never listen to it, and that's fine. My partner Chris and I, Chris LaMartina.
Hello, Chris.
That's how I learned how to do this. We would do idea books as collaborators. We would come up with the idea together, and then I would just make a book, and he would too, where it's literally just random, like you said, gags. Okay, what are the gags that we could possibly put on this movie without even discussing it with each other? Just spitballing. What are the possible lines that could show up in a trailer or just show up in this movie based on this premise? What are the possible setbacks that a character could have in this situation? Like the antenna breaks, like on the time machine, like that was in the premise delivery, construction. You can just see it.
Right.
What are the possible victories, and so that would deliver on the promise of the premise? The bubble gum and the pudding cans fix the broken antenna. Like that's only something Bill and Ted would come up with.
Good point.
Ted's dad's missing keys. Like what a great delivery on the premise. Like, well, dude, just tell yourself in the future.
Absolutely.
And then they look behind the sign. Only Bill and Ted would come up with that.
And it only works with Bill and Ted.
It only works based on these
their demeanor
people.
And their intelligence level and their purity could do something like that.
Exactly.
They're not cynics, so they don't go, well, if we can do that, we already have won.
In
so this
another
whole movie's
movie,
over.
that doesn't work.
Right. It
works because of the premise.
Imagine if Doctor Who started to do that. Every episode would be 10 minutes long.
Yeah, it'd be 10 minutes long. It's like, I'll just fix it with time travel later, and then you just forget. Yeah.
Yeah, like the message on the typewriter. Hey, dudes.
Right.
Now duck. Like these things. Only Bill and Ted would come up with as solutions, and that's in the premise building. So, yes, but that's what Chris and I would do. We would make these huge books full of all these gags.
Only Bill and Ted could actually befriend all of these figures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Only them.
Oh, they would get along with everybody, right? Yeah.
It's like
exactly.
You had to write the movie where these two guys are the only two guys in the universe that get along with everyone.
And that's a great question.
Yeah.
What are their relationships like?
Yeah.
What are the relationships like that you could put in this movie that would work and deliver on the promise of the premise?
Yeah, and they're also almost unaware of the dangers or the risks. They just grab Genghis Khan.
They're unskilled. We're
that's gonna go into the arc section.
I was gonna say, like, we're shown that they don't know history. So the fact that they do pick up Genghis Khan, they don't understand what that means.
Exactly. They don't have no idea.
They have no clue. Right.
Exactly.
But so this movie is a fantastic example of how you can take just a really simple premise and squeeze all the juice out of it to make it as entertaining as possible. And
Also, how much work goes into it. It's
so
not just a dumb movie.
Oh, so much work.
This is a great genre. It's an extrememe smart movie about dumb characters, which is like my favorite genre ever. It's my favorite genre. Sub-genre, but yeah.
Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah, like Dumb and Dumber, and a terrific movie about extremely stupid characters.
Full Triumphant.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that because you get movies like this, and people dismiss it as stupid, and it's like... And it's like everything Jimmy just said, that there's so much thought put in to the stupidity.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, there's something about it, like even a movie like Galaxy Quest has its roots in this.
Yes, right.
It has
it's a little bit more refined version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because it has more characters to focus on. It's got more work to do.
But I would say too, with this premise delivery thing, so write your lists. You can do this almost right after you come up with a concept.
Immediately.
It's almost like the first thing you
yeah.
do. It's brainstorming.
Yeah.
This
is the thing you stare at when you're writing.
It's exciting.
It does. It's one of the most fun parts because you're inventing all this stuff very fast.
Yeah.
Because you don't hit that wall. It's like, I'm a juggler, right?
Yeah.
So when you learn to juggle, the first year is fun because every day you learn a new trick. And then once you hit about the second year part and you get to like 5-6 balls, suddenly it takes like a year to learn every trick, you know? But I think the same is true in this phase. It's like when you get to this first phase, all your ideas are just flowing out. They're firing on all cylinders. And then you're going to hit a point where you're like a little bit more stumped, but that comes later on.
But you know what's great though? For this movie, for this movie specifically, they not only had the Bill and Ted whiteboard, they had like the Genghis Khan whiteboard.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
They had him going to a sporting goods store, and then they
all the
had Beethoven playing keyboards in the 80s.
And then they also had the time travel whiteboard.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Specific to time travel.
All the things
right.
and you can just see it on every page, on every moment in the movie, the construction.
Yep.
I've used this phrase ever since you said it on this podcast. Just keep talking, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep talking. Just keep talking it out when you're building it, and you're guaranteed to come up with all that fun stuff.
Fun is a big word with this movie.
Oh, fun! It's just, dude.
I think that's
so
what sells
fun.
it beyond.
I got a smile on my face talking about
it. Right.
Yeah.
Steaks. Steaks are
so guys.
Steaks are really interesting with this one, I think.
So. It's a low stakes story when you talk about half of it.
It is and it isn't. It actually creates life or death stakes.
Right.
Because they're going to be split up if they don't pass history. So them splitting up to them is life or death. It means they'll never have the band. Ted's going to go away to military school in Alaska, which is like death. I mean, that's like death. But on top of that, there's this whole the future will die stakes.
Yep.
So it really does pile on the stakes, even though the stakes are just passing a history test.
Exactly.
Okay, this is a weird thing to say, but once again, it's only Bill and Ted does this work with those type of stakes. I kind of also attribute it to like Paul Rudd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like the genius stroke of Ant-Man is that when he's going to be in the next Avengers movie, when Paul runs around, everyone feels like no matter how dire everything is, it's kind of okay.
It's going to be okay.
If Bill and Ted are there, it's all going to be okay.
Everything's cool, man.
The future's going to die. Genghis Khan is right there with Napoleon. It's still, everything's going to be okay.
That's well put.
Like you have to write those characters properly, or else this would be a disaster without Bill and Ted written properly.
I would also say this is a movie with low obstacles. Like most
that's why.
It's relatively
they
easy.
get handed the time machine,
but I think you know what the obstacle is. Again, it only works with Bill and Ted because they're a little dumb. They're a little history challenge.
It's their challenge of their intelligence.
They might lose Napoleon at the mall. You know, most people wouldn't lose Napoleon. Let Napoleon go with. What's his name? Declan or whatever.
Deacon.
Declan.
Deacon.
Yeah, Deacon.
Deacon stole my Easter basket.
They're not exactly.
Yeah, right.
They're not just going to let Napoleon go with. Most characters wouldn't do that. They'd keep an eye on Napoleon.
Right.
But they would. So the obstacles for them to pull all this off is harder for them because of the way their attitude.
It's internal antagonism, their own kind of stupidity,
and that they're not even aware of.
A lot of the capture scenes are really just grab them,
get them.
Yeah.
There's not
they don't
much
make
effort.
They don't make a meal of it.
They don't have to learn the value of that historical moment.
They don't need to learn the intricacies of time travel either. They just do it.
The medieval times one probably is the one that is probably the most fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite lines: "Put him in the Iron Maiden."
Iron Maiden.
Excellent.
Right.
Execute them.
Which is that's the thing I would write.
Dude.
I would hope that if I was writing this movie, that's the one.
Yeah, that's
joke
trailer, man.
That's trailer right there.
Exactly.
No, but I wanted to talk about stakes because we haven't talked about it much, and a lot of times you say it. What's at stake? I think a lot of people think they know what stakes are and how to use it, and stakes are stakes are what the character stands to lose if they fail, right? And there's tons of possible things that could be put at stake, but often and that's how you understand the motivation why the characters are doing the things they're doing. But so many times I see a script that is like so well constructed, the dialogue's awesome, the structure's badass, everything is fantastic about the script, except we've never been shown what's motivating them to do the things that they're doing. There's like no stakes presented for the entire movie.
Like this, if it ends without them completing the task,
it didn't need to happen. Matter. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't
and
matter.
So this movie does.
And it also points out that thing we talked about too in many episodes. The stakes often determine the why right now. The why now. Why does this have to happen right now?
This one has a great one.
This one has the
fate of the world.
This has the fate of the world. This one has military school also. It's not just them breaking up, but
and puts that ticking clock on the back end that they have to do it by a certain time.
Right.
So it
and
has
they
to
shift and they change.
Rufus doesn't ever say why.
Dude,
I love that. They
too.
add in the ticking clock. And just you have to accept it.
Yeah,
there's just no other.
This is it. It makes it simple.
There's a ticking clock.
I broke it down. I wanted to kind of show how you could stack them, because often what I read, for anyone who's just listening to this for the first time, I read amateur scripts all day, every day, 5 days a week, and what I often read is just one thing at stake. And you can stack them. You can put like multiple 3, 4, 5 things at stake in the same scene, and they can change from scene to scene. And I wanted to show how in the first 10 minutes, Bill and Ted just stacks the stakes.
Sure.
So at the first scene, Rufus says it's very all this stuff. You'll see how clear it is. Rufus says, "If I fail to get these two on the right path, the basis of our society will be in danger." Bam.
And in a direct address fourth wall break.
Direct address fourth wall break.
Yeah.
It works though.
It worked. No.
Yeah.
It's just an extra little layer
they
that
show
add.
it in the future.
Yeah.
Like it's just so perfect. It's so clean, so easy. So we're in the future. We understand like his world and our future is at stake if Bill and Ted don't do this.
It's a conversation about tone right there.
You know, it's almost
right.
True.
I mean,
the fact
that the fact that Rufus can just direct address and you don't question it even
fourth
remotely.
wall breaking.
Yeah. It's an interesting movie stakes wise because it feels like they're doing extra credit to add the stakes. They work really hard to establish the stakes.
They do.
Extra credit, no pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Yeah, they want to make sure you really understand what's happening in this movie. Yeah. And then in 6 minutes in, after putting on a sad display of history knowledge in class, Mr. Ryan says very simply and clearly, easy to understand.
Right.
It's really quite simple.
Classroom.
If you don't get an A+, I will flunk both of you, which are education stakes. And for a teenager, I always look at education as their livelihood, right? So if they were adults, this would be like they might lose their job. But as teenagers, your job is going to school.
Right.
So there you go. So now you have on top of...
then even I think on top of that, he says something, whatever you do has to be really special.
Oh, yeah, he
does
say that.
So
it has to be good and unique.
So again, and obstacles for characters... The harder you can make the obstacles, the better. Because if they could just write a report, that would be one thing. But these guys that could barely write a report have to do something really special.
Well,
that's a really good point, man.
It has to be an A+.
It has to be an A+.
It has to be an A+.
A+, and they can't write the report.
Yeah, they're incapable.
The only way they can is if there's this like solid gold, golden ticket.
Yeah,
that's the only way this will work.
We see them trying to write the report, jumping on the bed and doing all that stuff, and it
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then 8 minutes in, so the very next scene, 8 minutes. I'm just trying to show how they make them all clear.
Yeah, no, keep going.
Bill says, Ted, we are in danger of flunking most heinously tomorrow.
Right.
So we got the education livelihood stakes restated. The very next scene is the Ted's dad scene, where Ted's dad says, if you fail history, you flunk out of school, and I will send you to Oates Military Academy. So we got the education stakes, we got the end of the future of the world stakes, and now we have Ted's freedom, really.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's sort of an imprisonment, too.
Absolutely.
Right? So we'll talk about motivation, right? And how simple.
And that's also, we'll talk about that with arcs, but I also feel like that's a tiny bit of stakes too, is his relationship with his father.
That's good. I never really thought about that.
Yeah, like that's at stake too. His relationship with his father.
Dad.
Yeah,
he's got to prove his dad wrong.
He has
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
That's really true.
Yeah.
The very next scene, so we're still not even 10 minutes in. We're getting all this motivation, understanding. Bill and Ted are discussing the previous conversation with his dad. and the threat of military school in Alaska. And Ted says, we gotta pass, otherwise there's no more band. So it's like,
Right.
shit.
Right.
Okay, the end of the universe. They're gonna flunk out of school. Ted's gonna end up in Alaska, and worst of all, there's gonna be no band. Shit.
Right now, I'd love to point out something that I absolutely love about this movie and in the script is that they establish at the very open that the thing that the two of them think they need to make the band work, which we've already been told is the most important thing in the history of mankind, is Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
And when they finally get their magic wand, they don't even remotely think to use it for that.
No, I
that
know.
never
It's
comes
awesome.
up. And it's I don't feel like it's lazy. It's just them.
No, it's who they are. They would never figure that out.
They never would think. They would never. Wait, we could just use this to make the band better instead of going and doing all this stuff to make the Rube Goldberg machine of our lives. Or they didn't think they could just become.
Just go. Yeah.
Just learn to just use it to be. Yeah, go get them.
That's a good point.
Get them.
And, you could see a different movie where that is all about what it is.
Yeah,
like,
screw the future.
We're gonna make a band. Let's go get Mozart and Eddie Van
yeah.
Halen and this and that.
Yeah,
that could be a great movie.
That would be a great movie. Them trying to figure out. That's like School of Rock with time travel.
Or it's kind of
they
like
make their own damn Yankees out of history.
Dude, that's great.
Yeah, right.
Let's write it.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's do it about baseball.
Let's do the premise delivery.
They build their Expendables pretty much.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome. So anyway, you see in the first 10 minutes all of those education. So and that one is ambition fulfillment stakes, right? So they have an ambition, and if they fail, they're going to lose that ambition. That's like another thing that you
Their dream is
their
gonna
dream,
die.
yeah,
Their dream's
going to die. So we're 10 minutes in, and we have all of these things that we understand that's motivating them, and it's such a simple movie, and yet look at all of those intricate details of these characters and what's motivating them to do it.
Right.
So I just think it's a really pure, like you said in past, like with Galaxy Quest, these things are really easy to learn from. It almost plays like a Disney movie. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's like greatness in simplicity.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Less is more. All that
Less
same
is more.
crap you can say on a Christmas card or whatever. Put it on a cat poster. It's right.
I'm gasping.
No, it's okay. You just read like 3 pages of stuff, Jimmy.
That's how we roll sometimes.
Right. Well, ticking clock mechanism.
Yeah, it kind of ties right into it.
It kind of ties what you said. I mean, they literally make up their own rules for time travel, so that is thrown out the door, I think, with him explaining that.
Yeah, it seems like I guess in this universe, time is consistent, so they have to get back by noon. So if they take an hour to go back in time, they have to kind of,
In a weird way, it's the only time travel movie written to address the actual time that the traveler experiences.
That's right.
Yeah,
which
perfectly.
is something that most time travel movies don't. Like Marty McFly is like always going to be like 3 weeks older than he is, no matter what. Like you know what I'm saying? Like no one ever addresses that. This sort of is like Rufus going, you can
That's
only
what matters.
You only get like 2 days, and then you got to start living your life again. You can't. Yeah.
The reason that I want to talk about it, not only because we haven't talked about it much, but for a movie that's about time, it doesn't really have that many mechanisms. Like for instance, like Mission Impossible, Mission Impossible Fallout has like 25.
Right.
This one has like 5.
Yeah.
What's the David Mamet why now rule?
It literally
beyond
is
the premise.
No, it's just literally every scene. Why does this scene have to happen?
Why
now?
does this have to
happen? That's all.
So the premise has a great why now question, but also I feel like if you answer that why now, that creates like its own mini urgency within the scene, probably.
Yeah. Usually it's kind of weird. Usually the why now is a cause effect thing, but I think because this one's episodic, that's why we need the ticking clock.
Yeah.
Because it's not like getting Billy the Kid then necessitates getting Genghis Khan, they could get them in any order.
They create when they go to get Billy the Kid, they add in the mini plot.
Right.
When he's there, that he's being, everyone wants to kill him, and they gotta get him out of there. It's a new ticking clock every time they arrive.
Yeah,
and you can, they can be reset. They're going to be
executed by
onto each other.
Medieval England. They have to get,
Yeah. There's urgency within each sequence to do it. Yeah.
I always thought the one scene that when I watched this time, I was like, The Napoleon scene's kind of odd. They just stop there, look at a war, and then go back.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
They
budget
run
thing.
away.
Yeah.
They look at it's War and Peace.
War clip.
War and
Yeah,
Peace.
yeah, and then they just they couldn't afford that.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny because it's just like Rufus showing them that they can go back in time, so they accidentally pick up
Yeah,
Napoleon.
it's kind of like, oh, he's there.
Yeah.
But it works, man. It works. No, but I tracked how, because I was fascinated. I was like, when I watched it at first, because I watched it twice for the podcast, and the first time I was struck by how little we cared about the time. It's that we weren't reminded that often, and so I was trying to see what actually this story does to make you feel urgency. So the first one, it's set up right from the beginning, which is the deadline. The deadline of the final project tomorrow. So now we know we have 24 hours to get all of this done. So 24 hours to save history.
The clock's always ticking in San Dimas, which doesnn't make sense, even with time travel, but it does because the movie just says it does.
That don't bother me at all.
Yeah, you just take it.
I get that rule. Once you just have to tell it, and we accept it.
And then the second one is Rufus tells Ted, make sure to wind your watch. Or Ted tells Ted.
Yeah.
They both tell him.
Yeah.
Make sure to wind your watch.
Yeah. Right.
And then the third ticking clock mechanism is the functionality of the booth starts fucking up. Mm-hmm. So they have to get all this stuff done before the booth falls apart. That's another, and it's visual. We can see it. Like, it starts falling apart, and it keeps falling apart, and the more it falls apart, like, the less opportunity they have to achieve the goal. Because, like, it's important to, a lot of times people just use clocks, but you can use, we're going back to the Future. You can use it's the photo. Every time something happens in the story, somebody disappears from the photo.
Also, there's it's never made clear, but the circuits of time even start to break down a little bit. Remember the whole loop
circuits
thing?
Of time. Yeah,
they start to they lose control of what
because
they're doing.
of the booth is falling apart.
Yeah,
and you can see, and that's visual. Like, nothing needs to be said.
It's visual, yeah.
And we in the audience feel like, oh shit, they got to get it all done before
for this thing that kills them pretty much. Yeah,
and then we find out that because we haven't been told what time the assembly starts. Then we find out after they fix the booth, they have a new clock, which is the assembly starts at 1:30, and so now we have a new clock. Oh shit, they got to get all this done by 1:30, right?
They got to and then they got to go find Napoleon.
Then they have to go back and get Napoleon by 1:30, right? Yeah, and then you find out, but then the clock changes again. You learn that Bill and Ted are specifically scheduled at 2:45. So, like, okay, they got another hour, right? Like,
and then the arrests.
And then the arrests fuck that up and delay them. And then another mechanism that they use is every new student that comes on stage tells us that they have less time. So they don't even need to show the clock. They just show another student, and you're like, oh shit, they're getting closer and closer. So it's a countdown, but it's not an actual clock. It's just a human being on stage.
Closer. Insert of the pad of the teacher, and he's like circling it. Yeah,
for clarity. Scratching out. Right. So once again, it's not an actual clock, but it still tells us that that time is counting down. So that's it. That's not that many. What was that, like 6?
No, but they're sweeping though.
Yeah, they're sweeping.
They kind of cover the whole thing, and the movie's pretty light.
Yeah,
it doesn't need that.
Because again, in between the seams, it's kind of sketch. It's just like, let's do this sketch, let's do that sketch, and then these things just kind of tie it together for the audience. The audience knows that we're going somewhere. We have a trajectory.
Right.
We kind of feel we can internalize the end coming.
The original ending that was filmed is different. You guys know that, right?
I didn't know that.
No, the original ending, it ends at prom. And they take the princesses to prom. Yeah, they actually made action figures of that ending. And
what was the? Was that like the
epilogue?
The epilogue.
I've never seen it, obviously, but it ended at prom, and then they decided they need a much more grandiose ending. So they actually filmed the ending that we know and love.
I love that ending. Yeah,
and it seamlessly is inserted in there somehow. And
wow.
Yeah. But it originally ended at prom.
Okay.
Which is odd because the setup they must, I think they refilmed stuff at the beginning too.
They must have.
There's
nothing in there.
Yeah, it's like airtight.
Warrant that. Yeah.
In fact, when I rewatched it this time, the princesses are a little tacked on.
Yep.
I
agree.
But
I don't remember.
Their love interests back then were kind of like standard. You had to have love interests.
They like meet him one time and then they come back, and it's it's not like
I'm in love.
That's it. The princesses are more character work. Yeah, it's just the two of them.
Yeah.
Need a love interest, and
Yes.
them finding
This will not
princesses
pass
as
the Bechdel
babes.
test.
It does not.
Yeah.
No.
Product of its time, though.
Right.
Joan of Arc talks to us. No,
There's two.
In another.
Missy talks to Joan of Arc. No, I don't. Just,
And there's one homophobic joke.
Yeah, but that's a product of its time,
It's
too.
product of time. Alex Winter said that will not be repeated in the third one.
Yeah, you would. Yeah.
Yeah, he knows. He,
But yeah, so it's another easy to track, easy to learn from ticking clock examples to create urgency for Bill and Ted to achieve their goal.
mm-hmm.
And in that, let's talk about the villains that are.
Yeah, so it's an
Are there?
interesting.
Who's the antagonist in this movie?
It's low obstacle. I think time is the antagonist. Really,
That's awesome. I love that.
It's a race. It's.
I mean, you could say Ted's dad.
That's like an intangible.
Ted's dad is kind of an antagonist. But
yeah, they're low.
He is going to do the thing that will destroy the future without knowing.
They run into obstacles like the guy who's going to execute them.
Yeah.
Billy the Kid's enemies. Things like that. They run into obstacles.
Like you said, it's low obstacles.
But they kind of they change from sketch to sketch. Even finding Napoleon, that the obstacle is where is he? It's kind of the mystery of it.
Yeah.
Things like that.
It's really low. Yeah.
They're very low and they change a lot. But time is the ultimate thing. They're running a race, essentially. They're running a race to get all these things to be on stage at whatever time, 2:45, 2:30.
Do you guys think that
I love that.
the lack of
I never thought about
the
that.
lack of a Snidely whiplash here is what lets the movie be fun in games, kind of? You know what I mean? Is that the fact that we know the end goal and we know the premise, and they can have fun in the middle because there's no, twirling mustache villain.
I think it would be a completely different
Right.
movie.
It would be the sequel has the villain.
I was going to say.
Yeah, the sequel has the villain. And the sequel is a different movie. It's a completely different movie. But this is allowed to be like that because there is no one pressing them, and
it just really stuck out to me that
there's no one chasing them through time and
no one trying
pushing
to stop them.
and,
There's no one who wants to bring destruction and chaos to the universe.
There's no one. Yeah, there's no one that wants to destroy the future.
Yeah,
which I bet is something they talked about and saved it for the sequel. Like we said. Yeah, they saved it for the sequel.
Maybe in the premises delivery, they were like, "Let's save it.
We don't need this. Time is enough. Time is enough." Right.
It's kind of not having a villain because I really love the second movie probably even more than the first, but because it does have the villain and it does have those stakes and there's kind of even more to it. It has a bigger budget too and things like that.
It's crazier.
Yeah, it's crazier.
It's crazy.
This movie almost feels like that's part of the joke. Is like it's kind of about nothing. It's not. There's not a lot of obstacles, and that's part of the joke.
This movie is more in keeping with Bill and Ted themselves,
right?
Like the tone of the movie is also them.
It's kind of a slacker of a movie.
Whereas the sequel is like, let's put these guys in a much darker situation where they're actually being forced into it, against their own will, and they have adversaries,
Yep.
Yeah, and they're so good they turn some adversaries to their side.
Yeah, you're right. This would be the second one.
This would be the second movie. That's and the great sequel is something it's markedly different than the first.
The ante.
Yeah. Arcs is Arcs. I want to talk about Arcs.
That's why I brought this up.
Yeah, because we've talked a little bit about Back to the Future before, and I think one of the amazing things about Back to the Future is that Marty doesn't really have one.
Right.
Yep.
And it's odd that this is also an 80s time traveling movie that's really popular. And I also kind of don't feel like Bill and Ted have them either.
Yeah.
They have like arcs in what they accomplish.
Yeah.
But they are still Bill and Ted. And that's why they're great, is because Bill and Ted cannot be changed. Want Bill and Ted's greatness affects everyone around them, right, Jamie?
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're Superman, pretty much.
I think I've even read. I don't know if it was an Ed Solomon quote.
Love to hear what Ed says about it.
But I think I read that he thinks they don't have an arc. He said, "Yeah, they're characters that didn't have an arc, but maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was like Alex Winter or something." I have a memory of reading an interview.
But that's why. But if they had an arc, it would be a different movie, and they wouldn't be iconic.
So I was trying to dig this time when I watched into an arc, and I'll tell you what I came up with.
Okay. Yes.
And then I'll say.
I can't really formulate it, but they do go from people that think getting Eddie Van Halen is the key to the band to people that actually think it's time to put in the effort and play the instruments. It's not exactly beat for beat learned. Like you could see a version of it where they learned from the history people, and that's why like they learned Napoleon had to do it this way, so we had to, and they put it together. They don't do that in this movie, but
you're not wrong. They're not different people though.
They're not different people.
Yeah,
right.
But it feels like the type of thing that is an arc. Maybe we should learn to use these instruments.
Right.
They're a little more mature. There are people that actually pulled off a great history.
Yeah,
thing
they
and
did.
got
Yeah,
an
yeah,
A+.
They did.
And they didn't start as that.
They didn't
So-
slack their way through that project.
Right.
No,
and
they did not. They tried.
And they actually
Yeah.
seem like they learned something, like, let's learn to play the instruments.
Yeah.
So I think there is an
Yeah.
arc. I don't know that it's not that I'm not saying this in a negative way, because I as much believe what you said, Bob. As
Yeah,
I say.
I
feel
didn't think
both
you're
ways.
disagreeing with me. No,
I-
I agree with that too.
I don't
yeah.
think this arc is necessarily quote unquote earned or it's beat for beat spelled out
or even intentional.
or even
completely,
intentional.
like
yeah.
a little
I
bit
feel
maybe.
like that's
half
why
and
I'd love
half.
to hear what he says.
Yeah.
You basically said everything I was gonna say. I feel like it's not earned, but it does have this feeling of thoughtless to wise,
Yeah.
and it does have this feeling of people who talk the talk and then learn to walk the walk. Because there's a clear bookend of those garage scenes where it's very intentional that they're like, let's get Eddie Van Halen and let's do the video, and then in the bookend version of that, they're like, dude, forget about Eddie Van Halen. Let's learn to play instruments ourselves,
right. Yeah.
and let's figure this out. And that's like a clear change,
and
you know?
It is a change. I guess sometimes with arcs, I view it more as a personality thing.
Okay, I got
So-
you.
Does that make sense?
But well, here's what I would say though.
You're not wrong. I'm not disagreeing.
It's not profound.
It's not. No. They learned a lesson. They didn't learn to be different.
Yeah.
But
how's
like
that?
a cartoon episode.
It's a cartoon, right?
But
Yeah.
I would say this though. Remember the two arcs, and we added a third. The two arcs are: one, learn to be more confident; two, have more empathy, care about others.
Yeah.
Confidence, I guess.
I think it's confidence.
Yeah, it's
I think they
confidence.
start off as people that maybe didn't have the confidence,
as
but
much
then
as they have the capacity for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
through pulling off this very difficult project, they gain confidence that maybe they can pull off the next project. That's kind of how
I don't think the movie
Perfect,
is like
Jamie.
hung on that at all.
Yeah, nah.
It doesn't matter,
It
but
doesn't matter.
Nah.
it's there.
Yeah.
It's like there.
Yeah.
It's like fine. It's
It
not.
does feel like the end of a Saturday morning cartoon episode. Yeah, like, hey,
Yeah.
we can play these instruments now. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I
No,
think
no,
that's
no. None of this is
simplicity.
negative. I wrote on here like goals instead of arcs kind of
Yeah.
thing, and that's also.
But I
a
do
little
think
bit,
of them as
you
one
know,
character
Mm-hmm.
in this one, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
The only weird split between them is the dad.
The dad.
character.
yeah. And the mom.
And the
She's
dad.
not your mom.
Yeah. The dad.
Right. Yeah.
The dad does arc to have appreciation for Ted, and maybe he can pull this stuff off. I
Yeah.
guess in the end, a little bit.
Well, he's obviously impressed.
He's not
Yeah.
sending him to
He
military.
he has
school.
no faith in his son at the beginning,
Right.
and he has faith after the presentation,
Yeah.
assumedly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like, it could be both. It could be
It's-
that they
Hopefully,
didn't-
they learn that the
I
princesses
think
need.
you said it perfectly.
Yeah.
They have this sign of sort of presence of a change, but it's not really earned.
Well,
It's
I think because,
But
this
it's not
is-
asking to be earned.
no, it doesn't need.
This
to be.
is where they stay the same. Is that I'm not entirely sure that them deciding to learn to play the instruments is going to mean anything. Like,
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what their
'Cause
definition
outside of
learning-
Rufus telling them it will, they
Yeah.
have no proof.
Yeah.
Right.
I
It's a
don't.
good call.
I can't
Yeah.
imagine that they're going to go and sign up for lessons or
Yeah,
anything. Or,
yeah.
you know, they're going to figure it out their own way.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what if I hit this string this way? Or, you know,
They
it's like,
do
I don't
get
know.
better.
Right. It's not a movie about arcs.
No, it doesn't need to be. But it
doesn't
was
need
fun
to
to
be.
talk about it. You know,
Which is also like that's kind of like the magic of this movie is
you
like
don't need it.
the fact that you can write the movie without a villain and without arcs,
Yeah,
and it's still amazing and beloved,
beloved.
and great, and it works and it's fun. It's like
Yeah.
that's an incredible amount of craft right
yeah,
there.
it is.
I would even say, and this isn't something I've ever voiced before or thought
Ooh.
before.
Ooh,
No, it's not that big of a deal. But I mean, you're going to be like, obviously, but it has a little bit of a satirical nature. It's it's spoofing and satirizing a certain genre, and I think even that arc, like maybe we'll learn to lose. I think it's sort of
It's almost a wink, wink
Yeah,
to
it's,
that.
It's sort of
yeah.
nodding to the
Yeah.
tropes of that,
Yeah.
where they're kind of, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's.
I mean, right off the bat, the phone booth is a satire of Doctor Who.
Doctor Who,
So
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
stuff like that. I mean, you just kind of set it up.
yeah.
Yeah.
The sequel ups that satiric ante tenfold too. So, yeah. Is there anything else we have to
You
talk
got
about
it,
this?
man.
No, I think we're good.
I mean,
Joyful experience.
it's a joyful experience. Like, in a cynical world, I could see this movie being torn apart now if it came out now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Alex Winter himself has said like the third one will not lose that edge of being uncynical.
Oh, that's great.
Well, I mean, they wrote it. They've been writing it for how long? Like, Matheson and Solomon have been writing for how long? But it is a weird thing to think about them making another one of these now. In a world the world is so cynical. So cynical. Well, because everyone would just be like,
snark.
The time travel doesn't work. And you're like, oh, man, that's not what this is.
Yeah.
Like,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I think that kind of satirical nature, though, protects them to a certain extent from that. A little because it's like, hey, this is a joke on that.
Jamie, there's a big difference between 89 and 19, you know?
Everybody thinks everything's the same. They think jokes are the same.
They put it all in one box.
Everything's the same, and it's not. But I would also say, here's the weird part. I would say, if I was writing that, where I'd be scared.
The third one now.
The third one now.
Yeah.
The actors are older, and it's hard to do an old people story that's not a little cynical, looking back.
Yeah.
So that's the weird part. Like those two guys being the same guys when they're in their 50s or whatever they're going to be. That's the part I'd have trouble writing.
But I'm excited to see, especially since it didn't come true.
Yeah,
they've said,
they're failures.
They've said for years that they've been thinking about that premise for years. Though they've said that Bill and Ted being old is hilarious to them. So I'm sure they've got a whiteboard filled with all the jokes. What are these guys 20, 30 years later? What are they like?
Definitely.
What is their life? You know. So
it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight of the series.
Oh man, I hope not. That would destroy me.
It's
not going to be. Everything Ed Solomon says on Twitter is just amazing.
Frank Miller's Bill and Ted.
God, Zack Snyder's Bill and Ted. Well, if they hopefully when it gets made, it's the director of Galaxy Quest. So
fantastic.
I mean, could you ask for anything more perfect?
Ivan Reitman.
Not now.
I don't know.
Not now.
1984 Ivan Reitman.
Sure, fine, but not now. Anything else, guys? Anything else?
No. What'd you guys learn?
I
mean, God, I feel like everything was learning this episode. This is all learning.
I mean, the premise delivery thing stands out for me for this one. Write those lists. Start writing those lists. Put it on paper. Write a big list. Don't think too much.
Yeah.
Just write.
Have fun with it.
Yep.
Keep talking.
Keep talking.
I learned, because you made a great point, that you can have a high concept story with no villain and no arc, and it can still be awesome.
Excellent.
I know.
Can still be excellent.
I learned, even though I probably subconsciously know it, I feel like that's this whole show for me. That this movie is pretty much fun and games the movie. I didn't ever really think of it like that, but that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
And that also kind of explains why people just find joy in it.
Yeah.
Because it is literally that. Most movies are like, here's a page, and then this is
the one page montage
stretched
out for at least 75 of the 90 minutes.
The one thing we didn't even talk about, this movie is crazy quotable. It's like one of the most quotable movies
I mean, be excellent to each other. Those guys have said if that's like the one thing that they put out in the world, they can. Everything else is kind of inconsequential, right? Yeah. All right.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
We did it.
You have just listened to Writers Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring two professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.